Well, good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
It's a beautiful Tuesday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikule.
And as you can see, we have Paper's guests this morning to take us along as we look at some of the issues in the papers this morning. Abimbola Toki is editor of Business World. Thank you so much for your time.
Always my pleasure.
Let's go straight to it. We begin with the Nigerian Tribune, and it leads with Borno massacre. Recruit mercenaries to defeat terrorists. Zulum tells federal government. Nigeria and neighboring countries will ensure no hiding place for terrorists. That's according to the president. Nigeria being denied weapons to fight terrorists. Again, the federal government says slain farmers didn't have permission to go to farm. That's according to the presidency. That report, that press statement, was all over the place yesterday. And presidency's reactions show lack of empathy for victims. That's coming from the People's Democratic Party. That story you'll find on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. What's your take on all of this?
Well, you know what that tells me straight away? The lack of faith in Nigeria's security architecture. Because if a governor is calling for intervention of mercenaries, that means that even the governors have lost faith in the security architecture of Nigeria. It's not only him. I think yesterday or so, governor of Kaduna State, El-Rufai, also had an interview, and he said that governors are frustrated, So I think it is getting to the peak at the moment. And we have a government that is showing, that is not showing enough responsibility as far as security is concerned. It also tells us the kind of government we have in power. At the moment, the only person that believes in the security chiefs is probably the president and some who are working some of those who are working with him. If you listen to Nigerians speak, they have lost faith, lost confidence in the security architecture of the country. And they keep sitting there. And the president is looking, and you begin to wonder, what is anybody benefiting from their continued stay in office? The security chiefs. Well, it is getting out of hand.
A number of questions so many people have raised about that one also goes in the line of, okay, so how significant will a change of leadership of the service chiefs be, given that constitutionally it is the role of the police to ensure internal security?
No, the Boko Haram, fighting of Boko Haram, is it the police that has been deployed there? We are talking of war. We are not talking of just ordinary attack or things like. We are talking of war situation. That's responsibility of the military, not the police. We can also see that police are already overwhelmed, even with the normal day-to-day security affairs of the country. Police is overwhelmed, and not only that, the governor they are powerless. They don't have control over the police. They don't have control over the army. As a matter of fact, if any governor directs commissioner of police to go and do something, he has to clarify from Abuja before he does it. And before you know it, a lot of harm must have been done across the states. So there is need for a rejig in the entire security architecture of the country. And I think it's getting to the peak. And I don't know. I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but government needs to do something very, very urgently as far as this is concerned.
Well, that's the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
Well, take a look at the front page of a Daily Trust. Similar headline. Zabamari aftermath. Borno governor wants foreign mercenaries back. You say that sounds like lack of trust. Some might say, maybe saying, well, we need more help. Yes, we have some form of, we have provisions, but maybe it's not enough. And you see the writers demands 5 other things from Buhari. There were actually a list of things that he wanted, especially when the federal government's delegation and the Senate's delegation visited yesterday. I see, take fight to insurgents, president orders military. It's on page 4. And, yet again, when we see attacks like this, we keep asking, what more can we do? What more can we do? This is not a security situation room, so it's going to be hard to speak to that. But clearly, a lot of Nigerians see what's happening, and they expect a lot. You have said the government should rejig the security architecture. But interestingly, the president is also saying the same thing. So whose responsibility is it to really rejig the security architecture?
Who appointed them?
Well, the president is asking the service chiefs to rejig the security architecture.
Yes. One thing that also strikes me here is the president waits for calamity to happen before he calls for action.
But they have meetings.
So what is the outcome of those meetings? The outcome of those meetings is what we saw day before yesterday, 2 days ago. What are the outcomes of those meetings? Look at the amount of, stupendous amount of money that has been spent on security in this country. We are not seeing the result. We are not seeing it. And some people are still sitting there feeling comfortable about it. Look at it. Look at the number of farmers that were killed. Not only killed, their throats were slitted. Come on. It's just dastard and it's getting out of hand. Honestly, it's getting out of hand. And I think we should begin to see proactive measures in this regard. The service chiefs, they seem to have outlived their relevance as far as this is concerned.
And you think that will guarantee?
Look at it. Even the National Assembly, they have called on the president to change some of these people. And the president has insisted that they should be there. Does it call? It calls for concern.
And the question people will ask yet again is, does that guarantee change in what we're seeing now? Does that guarantee fresh ideas? We had that conversation yesterday. So the question is, that change, are we sure that it will give us fresh ideas? Is that really where the challenge is here?
Have you implemented the change?
Also, you're saying we should try it first?
Yeah, come on.
So this is like trial and error?
No, not like that. Those who have fresh ideas. That's what we are talking about. Those who have fresh ideas. Those who can bring new things on board. You understand? This is what, we have a lot of brilliant people in the army. If these people, if they can't do something, you don't keeping them there. If occurrences and happenings around the country have told us that these people, they are no longer capable of the work they are given. So why can't you try new ideas? Why can't you try new brains and see that this will... And I believe it's not just appointing. You have to look at track records. Even if you want to change the architecture, you have to look at track records. You have to look at experiences. You have to look at what they have done in the past, not just change just for changing's sake.
Well, Mr. Atuki, I'd like to show you the front page picture, the big picture on the front page of the Daily Trust, just before we move on. And it shows University of Ibadan workers sweeping the institution's premises, not as a result of environmental or cleaning, but to celebrate the end of a tenure of Professor Olayinka, who was Vice-Chancellor of the university. Look at that.
Well, that goes to tell you, it says a lot about the administration of the outgoing Vice-Chancellor. And, people are happy, when people show the kind of happiness when a leader is going, it goes to tell you bunch as to what has been the achievement of that leader.
But it may also tell you what kind of followership or following he had.
No, excuse me. It's symbolic. When people sweep, that one is
when
symbolic.
Some people, it might also mean that, sometimes...
No, sweeping in this regard is symbolic. They are sweeping maybe bad record or something that is bad. They are sweeping it away to create an enabling environment for something new to come.
Isn't that subjective, Mr. Atuki? For some people it might be bad. For some people it may have been good. So do you think this is enough to judge his administration?
Maybe we should dig the achievement of the outgoing VC. Maybe we should talk to some of the stakeholders in the university and touch on what has been his achievement. Then you will now know why people are sweeping away.
Well, perhaps maybe since you are a journalist as well.
yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe that is what we should do.
The New Telegraph this morning is looking at pretty much the same story. Nigeria needs mercenaries to defeat Boko Haram. That's according to the governor of Borno State. Buhari orders military to flush out insurgents. I thought that directive was given about 5 years ago. How far with that? One may want to find out. Now, this one is interesting. Presidency says farmers didn't get military clearance. When I listened to the words of the governor of Borno, he was saying something. He said his people are between two devils, so to speak. They stay home and stay hungry, stay safe and hungry, or risk going out to get food or get killed. So they are between those two, those two devils, two ends. And here's the presidency saying perhaps they should have gotten military clearance before they went to the market, to their farms, But what do you make of that?
That pronouncement actually seems to me to be unguarded statement. And I think the statement was first credited to the president's spokesperson, that Shehu Garba. And I think he has tried to explain what he meant by what he said. When you are blaming those who are already dead for not doing certain things, you are not blaming yourself for not providing, for not securing the life of the citizens. You are blaming the dead for doing certain things. That seems to me to be very unreasonable and unguarded. Do we want to say that we don't know that farms are there? And if farms are there, who will cultivate the land? Is it not human being? Okay, we are talking of rice, which is, one of the staple food material in the country. We know that farms are there, and we know that people will cultivate the land. And the land we are talking about here is not just 1 acre or 2 acre. It's vast. It's an expanse of land. You understand? So, for such activities, adequate security is supposed to have been provided. So now saying that people didn't take clearance before they go to farm. For instance, now look at the rice we are talking about. They are rice farmers. How much is a bag of rice in the market? As a matter of fact, the local product is competing in terms of price with foreign products. You understand? So these are key farm areas that are supposed to be well guided in the first place.
Perhaps a number of people might look at it differently, that maybe because of the peculiarity of the security challenges there, it was a standard for anyone who wanted to go to any specific area to, get military clearance to be sure that it's okay to go. For instance, there was that time that the governor of Borno State was attacked. His convoy was attacked, and when he was going to a particular village, I forgot the name of the village, and they said that, look, he shouldn't have gone there because he had already been told that it was a security risk for him to go there. So perhaps that is the background from which
I'm not saying that I don't actually understand that statement, but I'm saying that, for instance, the people involved, how well educated are they? Okay? Are they well educated to know that there are certain periods? Because if you look at them, they are probably illiterates. Okay? Are they well informed? Are they well educated that this is the period you are to go to farm, this is the period you are not to go? If they are to obtain clearance, where would they obtain the clearance? What are the processes? What are the protocols? These are the things that you expect that government will put in place, especially when you know that these are volatile areas. So if people don't, if they are peasants, they are farmers, they may not understand some of the grammar we are talking about. They need to be well educated. They need to be well coached to know when to go and when not to go. And you can see that from what happened. These people are completely taken away. They are taken away and they lost their lives. En masse. That's pretty unfortunate.
Okay. Well, other, headlines and the story you'll find on pages 3 and 5 of the New Telegraph this morning. NSAS, right under the picture on the front page. NSAS started in National Assembly, says Gbajabia Mila. And the writer there, lecturer, says, it's hell without my wife killed by police. Stories up on pages 4 and 7. So, what do you make of that? NSAS started in the National Assembly, according to the Speaker, because processes, pronouncements, resolutions of the House were made that the federal government, the executive arm of government, should scrap SARS at the time.
Okay, so that means the National Assembly is blaming the executive for not being proactive enough. When you have arms of government not working in tandem, not working cooperatively, this is what we get. Not only NSAS, there are so many pronouncements, pronouncements from the National Assembly that are not taken into consideration by the executive. You understand? It's not only on this. So there is need for cohesion. There is need for cooperation between all arms of the government. Not only between the National Assembly and the executive, also the judiciary. Not only the three of them, but also with the fourth estate of the realm, which are the gentlemen sitting here this morning. So there is need for us to cooperate. Okay? If the executive had reacted positively to the cause of the National Assembly on this answer, maybe the protest we witnessed, we wouldn't have witnessed it. So there's need for proactive engagement with all sectors of
Well, let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. Leads with Borno massacre as well. A different tilt. Why Nigeria is at the mercy of terrorists. Lai Mohammed. Zulum asks federal government to engage mercenaries, lists other ways to clear insurgents. Take fight to insurgents, Buhari tells military, sends chief of staff to Borno. Military dispute UN report insists 43 farmers killed. Adds the civilian informant sabotaging operations in the northeast. Security operatives selling weapons to Boko Haram, Donald Duke alleges. The Senate Minority Caucus urges federal government to wake up and fight against Boko Haram. I think that just touches on some of the discussions we've had already.
Yeah, but you see, another thing that calls for concern there is who are the sponsors of these people? Why has it been very, very difficult for government to unveil the sponsors of this Boko Haram?
Oh, you think the government knows and it's probably not telling?
So what are we thought? That's part of intelligence gathering.
Since it's intelligence, should it be public knowledge, as it were?
Should it be public knowledge? Okay. It may not be public knowledge at the stage of gathering the intelligence. But when you have actually pinned the whole thing to particular people, those people have to face the law. So at that point, there's nothing secret about it again. So if after all these years, we know that these people are being sponsored by certain people, Nigerians or non-Nigerians, and they are still there, and they are still supplying them arms, then what are we talking about? What are we talking about?
Well, we're talking security. That's what we're talking about. But right on top of the nameplate, this is another angle to some of the things we've seen in recent times. Restructuring, but then 13% derivation. Militants bid to stop South-South governors split stakeholders. I don't know if you've been following that conversation about, paying the 30% directly to the oil communities. But don't forget that for a while now, just a few South-South states have that oil producing communities development commission, like the Symbolic, for example. So now there seems to be controversy over 13%. But then the states are even asking for more than 13%. But clearly it appears as though even the 13% that was being paid was not paid directly to the oil community. So is there anything you want to say about this?
Honestly, if you ask me, they even deserve more. They deserve more. This is one of the reasons why we have been very lazy in this part of the world. This is where the wealth of the nation is coming from. they deserve a large chunk of it. As a matter of fact, if government want to face reality, well, this is what, I can also say that this is what binds Nigeria together, the oil, as it were. But we should take cognizance of the fact that these people, they are suffering a lot. Okay, a lot is happening to their lands. It's unimaginable. So they even deserve more.
Maybe control of it?
Yes, I mean, you are talking of resource control. Well, I don't know. That has generated a lot of furor in the past, and I don't think they are even talking about that again, because it seems that the federal government is not ready to even board as far as that is concerned. But even if you are not talking of, and as a matter of fact, if you ask me, I believe that is the way to go. Each state should go and control its own resources, so that we can bring out. Nigeria is blessed. It's not only about oil. Look at the oil we are talking about now. Is it valuable now? The kind of revenue that government is generating from it has dipped so significantly. So resource control, honestly, if you ask me, that's the way to go. But if the federal government doesn't want to go that way, at least they should control substantial. The number, the derivation that goes to that should be reasonable. Okay. Very, very reasonable.
Yeah. Don't forget sports page, by the way, for sports bluffs. You see that Klopp and Ajax clash. You see Maradona's tribute. That's Vanguard Sports.
The Nigerian News Direct leads to the same story that we've talked about all morning. 110 Borno farmers' death. Buhari vows to end terrorism. The story is on page 7. As PDP blasts presidency on military clearance for farmers. Demands apology to Nigerians. All of that we've talked about significantly already this morning. And so many, stories to pick from on the front page of the paper. And just this one, and then we can go to the last one. Don't reverse ban on rice importation. Autumn begs Buhari. That story is on page 3. We seem to be in a dilemma there.
That's most unfortunate. These are the people that are benefiting from the misfortunes of Nigerians. Okay? Rice importation should not be encouraged. Whereas, locally, the price is as high as the foreign products. So what are we talking about? Look at it. Government has closed the land borders for almost a year now. And look at where we are. How much are we selling rice locally? How much are the farmers selling rice locally? Even when foreign rice were coming in, it was even cheaper than the local rice. So if they have been given that opportunity, why are we not still buying rice at 12,000 naira per bag, at 15,000 naira per bag? So it has outlived its relevance.
And now that we're counting down to Christmas, it's a huge concern.
So it has really, that call is so personal. Is very, very unreasonable at this point.
Well, let's round off with leadership quickly. The big story is, I believe, a response, our stand. CNN, don't mess with Nigeria. You wonder who's saying that? Well, you find out in Leadership newspaper, and there's that story about Nigeria not getting enough global support in the fight against terrorism. Well, at least we're expecting to receive the Super Tucano jets any moment, according to the Air Force. But clearly, we need more, and we don't seem to be getting them. So the big question is how or what kind of conversation are we having? But that's the leadership for you.
And that's the papers this morning, the much we can take of the dailies this morning. Mr. Abimbola Toki, editor of Business World, thank you so much for your time this morning.
My pleasure, always.
Okay. All right, we're back in a moment. Do stay with us. Two gentlemen join us this morning to discuss all angles likely. Of course, always when we talk about violent crimes and policing in Nigeria, we're looking at the operations and tactics deployed, the personnel and all of that. But everyone knows that as far as internal security is concerned, it is the primary function of the police. So why are we not having the kind of internal security we desire to have? Let's go dig a little bit into the background. Two gentlemen join us this morning, as I said. Austin Brymo is a member of the Police Service Commission. He joins us from our studios in Abuja. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Brymo, as well as Onyekachi Adekoya, who is a fellow Nigerian Institute of Industrial Security and Zonal Provost Marshal of the Association of Licensed Private Security Practitioners of Nigeria. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Let's begin with what the governor of Borno State said, what you heard him say. What do you make of that?
I think the part I caught the most was when he was proposing that perhaps it's time for us to get machineries involved.
All the newspapers this morning reported the same thing.
To help us clear the Sambisa forest. And, just yesterday I was thinking about the same thing. Because then President Goodluck Jonathan did the same thing. And the machineries were very effective. There's a constraint as to why the Nigerian military cannot deal with the issue of Boko Haram decisively. I've said on every platform that I've been given the opportunity to speak, we know where Boko Haram is. We know where they are holed in. We know how they operate. What we don't have is what we need to deal with the issue of Boko Haram. Now, the international community can, preach human rights and show concern all they want. It is also true that the military doesn't have the equipment it requires. If you speak to battlefield commanders, battalion commanders in the field, we've said Nigeria has about 30, 40 battalions operating in the Northeast. You will hear them sing the same song, equipment, equipment, equipment.
But that's not what we heard yesterday when we spoke with the director of media operations.
The height of this complaint was when you saw a major general. It is hard for you to see a major general put himself in front of his troops and then do a video recording saying to the military high command, we are here. All we need is equipment. So anybody can say what they want to say, but the narrative is being repeated. So it makes sense that if you have a fighting force that has equipment, what's the size of Sambisa Forest? What is the size of the army we're having to deal with? It's just that Nigeria as a state doesn't have the equipment. How many fighter helicopters do we have as a country? Operational. They may not be more than 15 or less. As a country, we are supposed to be the giant of Africa. So it makes sense at this time to consider every available option on the table because we need to push this insurgent force back as much as we can. So, when we say in management sciences, when you talk about ideas generation, you don't throw any idea out of the table. Let's look at all options right now.
So you are essentially talking about funding?
Well, not funding, because if you talk about funding, then you'll be looking at the issues of corruption. What has happened to the funds we have allotted?
No, I mean about everyone, depending on who we are listening to, they would allude to that. But absence or lack of equipment would probably mean that maybe we don't have enough funding deployed?
So, of course, we still don't. There's the issue of funding. But look at this analogy. We released $2 billion, sometime last year, $2 billion for purchase of equipment. If the machinery you want to hire has equipment, they have the tactics, they have the know-how, and they want to charge you, say, $200 million to get the job done, I would think that it is better to spend $200 million or $300 million, whatever the amount is, compared to purchasing equipment, at least in the near term. Let them move in, clear the place, and then you can then push in your force, because it's an issue of equipment. When you see how Boko Haram attacks, they attack in a drove. You may have like 20 mounted machine guns shooting at a military. That's why you see we took out the forward operating bases. It was no longer tenable and sustainable for the military to have those forward operating bases scattered far apart. When you have that strategy, it's a good strategy to have, but you then need the logistics and the support, close air support, to be able to prosecute that level of strategy. But so we went FOBs. We didn't have the second line of defense and forward support for the troops. And then Boko Haram was picking up the troops. What we now have is the military hold up in hope, hold up in super camps, going out on periodic fighting patrols, hoping to catch the insurgents, on occasion, but the initiative is still with the insurgents. And so the situation on ground is now that the communities that are far apart are left to themselves. Because sometimes it would take the military 6 hours to move from where they are to the nearest position of the incident that is happening. And Boko Haram has local intelligence. So how do you counter that narrative?
Okay.
They are in a particular area, like the Aripo area, for example, which is close to us here. I don't know if we remember when we had the issues with the guys who were doing bunkering and illegal operations. The military had to go in. It took the Air Force to soften the ground before the military could, because those guys had well-defended positions just here in Lagos. So we are looking at the same dynamics. You can't approach Sambisa Forest because the whole place is well mined up.
Okay.
Your MRAPs, which you procured, the MRAPs, they failed. They are not enough. You don't have helicopter guns. We don't have enough standoff munitions. So we can talk all day about the challenges and you know what. So if that option of equipment is not anywhere close by, I mean, the governor is making sense.
Okay. Well, that's for the big war. But then there seems to be smaller battles that we have to contend with, and that is that of the police. So let's talk to Mr. Brimo in Abuja. He is a member of the Police Service Commission. Well, so that issue is right there. Everyone is talking about why we are not having the kind of policing that we want. Now, it is part of the responsibilities of the Police Service Commission to see that the men are trained appropriately and retrained as and when due. It is also part of the functions of the Police Service Commission to ensure that their welfare packages are satisfactory. Given the, aftermath and all of the things that we've heard since the NSAS protests, the questions are there about the welfare of the police, for which reason we're not having the kind of police service we should have. How do you react?
It is not a fact that the welfare training of the Nigerian police is in the hands of the Commission. The Commission is principally there for the purpose of overseeing. That is a civilian oversight body over the Nigerian police. The welfare issue is the Nigerian Police Council, headed by the President, 36 state governors. And we now have Ministry of Police Affairs. So those are the legal bodies that take care of training and the other welfare for the Nigerian police logistics. Ours is principally appointments, discipline, promotion of men and women of the Nigerian police force from rank and file except to DIG, except the Inspector General of Police is directly reporting to Mr. President. So the problems we've really had really are not issues of training, as you are alluding. I'm not sure that lack of proper training has been the bane of our police force. Because if you have noted the way we have excelled in foreign support missions, you agree that Nigerian police force had done quite a lot of credit to this nation in terms of the way they discharge their duties under the United Nations and ECOWAS missions. We've always emerged one of the best police institutions in Africa. So that attests to the fact that training, it's not what we are lacking. But principally, it is clear that the Nigerian police force is underfunded and undermined. Because if you have a police force of less than 400,000 men that are to man about 2 million people, then certainly you know that something is wrong there. We are aware that we do not have enough men to go around, to actually maintain the space for us to have peace. Policing is about prevention. Prevention to ensure that crime is not committed, not where crime is being committed as such to stop it. If we can prevent crime, then we will not be where we are. So certainly a lot needs to be done in terms of recruitment. And we know the president has graciously approved a minimum of 10,000 police officers to be recruited annually, which we started about 2 years ago with some challenges here and there. But I think if we maintain the momentum, if the training institutions can be brought to the standards that's required of a modern policing, if we can really equip our training colleges and we keep bringing 10,000 every year, I think within the next 10 years, we may be getting close to the required numbers. But certainly, we do not have enough policemen, and we really need to add value to funding of this institution, because the police is underfunded. We do not have the required armory to face the internal insurrections that we are facing. Like what's happening in Borno State, you agree with me that police is the #1 institution that's supposed to be on ground to maintain peace. By the time the military liberates every territory, we are supposed to have very strong presence of police in that environment. That's like what happened, this unfortunate development of the slaughter of over 43 innocent farmers. If we had had a good presence of policemen in that place, it may have been averted. Because if you listen to the spokesman of the president yesterday while defending what happened, he was alluding to the fact that when these farmers normally go into the field, they usually enlist the services of civilian JTF. The civilian JTFs go before them, give them some level of protection from these insurgents.
You know, Mr.
And
Brimo,
then when they close from farm, they also escort them back.
Okay, Mr. Brimo, we'll get to that point.
Large...
We'll get to that point of a discussion in a moment, but just to get some clarity on some of the points you have made. I mean, I'm surprised when you say training is not an issue for the Nigerian police, but yet again you said that the training institutions need to be brought up to standard, and then you talk about underfunding. So it appears as though you say, well, training is not an issue, but then training is also an issue. But to the first question, really, because I think it's important to let Nigerians in on what exactly is happening. The act that establishes the Police Service Commission actually makes it part of your responsibility to formulate and implement policies aimed at the efficiency of the police force. Also gives you, the responsibility to perform such other functions which, in the opinion of the Commission, are required to ensure the optimal efficiency of the Nigerian police force. And efficiency is, it's a whole lot. The gamut is wide. So the question still remains that, well, you've said training is not an issue, but what are the challenges, really, that we don't have an efficient police? Take a look at, the police is meant to have a counter-terrorism unit, for example, but I don't think that's operational in the Northeast. So those are issues of efficiency which we'd like you to speak to.
Thank you. When I said training is not an issue, I was saying, I was trying to say that the major problem of policing is not training. It's not just to say that we do not have challenges with our training. That's why I quickly, in order to clarify that, I said our training institutions are not up to date. You have done a research in the past, particularly using the police college, Ikeja, to bring out the rot in some of our training institutions. We really need to update that. I'm not ruling out that, but I will try to let you know that in terms of performance, that we have well-trained officers that could stand their ground, that can stand their ground internationally, and they equally can do that here if they are provided the enabling environment. As regards the policy issue, yes, the Commission has put in place and will continue to put in place very viable policies that will enhance policing. The challenges have quite been numerous and are many. One, like I said, we do not have enough men. So no matter how much we try to bring in, and like we're still doing, we still have to face challenges of not having enough men. I like to also point out, for instance, that most of our, I will use the word most, when you have over 100,000 police officers out of less than 400,000 attached to the political office holders.
Mr. Brimo, just one moment. Let me ask you something. Even with the men, you said that we don't have enough men, but even with the men that we have, efficiency is an issue. And how can people be efficient if their welfare is not properly attended to? I don't know how you monitor efficiency of the men of the police force when their welfare, their satisfaction, their well-being, their psychological state doesn't put them in a space of being able to perform optimally. You'll speak to that, in a moment, but I think Mr. Adekoya would like to react to a number of things that you have raised. You wanted to...
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. I think that there are two issues here. The issue of efficiency, yes, but I think we are alluding to effectiveness of the force we have. Efficiency has to do with costing. So if we look at efficiency, we're looking at how much we're spending on the Nigerian police, and we're looking at the returns. What's our ROI for our spend? We're spending an average of about 360-something billion every year on the police. 2021 budget is going up to 440-something billion. So in efficiency terms, are we getting value for money? The question is for every Nigerian to answer.
Then the question arises that it's the amount of money earmarked or budgeted as opposed to the amount of money released have been different over the years.
I agree. And that happens to every ministry, every parastatal. Nobody's getting full 100% release. Now, when he says that training is not a problem, then he says training is a problem, I beg to disagree. A LASMA official in Nigeria will perform wonders abroad. So it's not a function of training. It's a function first of the Nigerian spirit, of our zest to be the best of ourselves. But do we find ourselves in the right environment? The answer is no. So I don't think that training thing holds water for me personally. I continue to maintain, and even police officers will also maintain, they are poorly trained, inadequately trained. The first training they get, which is a training at the police college, is barely adequate to carry them beyond 6 months. They must come back for a fresher training. And every quarter, area commanders should be having those workshops and retraining, and maybe having independent resource persons come in to, again, retool the police, because the security environment is very dynamic. You are dealing with moving targets almost all the time. So training has to be continuous. Yes, I agree there's a funding problem. In 2021 budget, we are budgeting about 186 million to upgrade the training colleges of the police. That's 186 million from the 441 billion proposed. And we say training is not a problem. Clearly, training is a problem. So training is a problem. Now, the last point I wanted to make is on of efficiency, and I think he was trying to make that point, and effectiveness. What is the cost of a police officer to a politician? It's next to nothing. That's why you find one politician has almost the size of a DPO, the size of a divisional police station, moving with him in convoy. There are some politicians who have almost 20 policemen with them at any time. So we say we don't have enough policemen, but we have enough police for the politicians. We have enough police for the VIPs, and we don't have enough police for Nigeria. I was driving to the studio, I was thinking, who really owns Nigeria? Who is Nigeria working for? Where is the interest of the common man in the general scheme of things? How many policemen do we have attached to the National Assembly? To officers in the National Assembly?
But he also spoke to the fact that we don't have enough policemen.
But we have enough for the VIPs. But we have enough for the politicians.
Okay, perhaps there is something that the Police Service Commission has been doing about that as well. Does that also include, is that part of the functions of the Police Service Commission to ensure even distribution of the men? Maybe not. But you want to speak to what the issue that we raised the other time, that even the number of policemen that we have, we need to find a way to ensure, as Mr. Adekoya has said, what your function is, the efficiency of the men that we already have now. That challenge is clearly in our faces. What can we do to ensure maximum efficiency despite the limitations that we have for now?
Clearly, that is what the core areas where we have been pushing legally to see to it that every police officer in Nigeria enjoys what will motivate him and make him an effective policeman. One, for that, training and retraining, like my colleague said, is supposed to be a continuous thing. Like you said, if you recall, in those days, every police officer used to carry about what we call a pocket notebook, to the extent that if you're moving out of one duty post, you must write down the reasons why you have to move. Your superior officer must acknowledge, and wherever you are going, when you get there, your movement is equally monitored. That was in the past. We've lost it somehow. You could see a policeman who is supposed to be in Ikeja, you could meet him in Victoria Island on any other assignment without the knowledge of his supervising officer. Along the line, we lost it, but like we said, we'll be putting in place several policies in this regard to ensure that the operationalization of these men that we have today is streamlined and is better. But certainly, it is on the desk of the Inspector General of Police to deploy officers and ensure that they maintain their regular duties. But as far as the Commission is concerned, we put enough policies on ground to ensure that they discharge, that we protect Nigerians. For instance, we've said severally that political office holders should, and under those conditions, should they enjoy more than necessary police deployments at the detriment of the populace, because we want the country to be policed, not the individuals. We want institutions to be policed, not necessarily the individuals, because these are clearly the guidelines that will bring about efficiency. So we have always put in place all sorts of every policy that we could to ensure that Nigerian police force is effective and efficient in the discharge of its duties. For instance, if you look at the welfare issue, the President has already addressed that. We're sure within the next few months, the new police salary structure will emerge, and it will be unveiled. For now, we know that even the retirement benefit of an average police officer is nothing to write home about. We are equally talking to the authorities to ensure that this is enhanced. We pointed out it is not good enough for a constable to join the police and spend 35 years, probably lucky to be retiring as an ASP. And you are retiring to receive a total package of about 2 million. Can 2 million build a house for you? The answer is no. Which car will you buy with 2 million as a total retirement benefit? It's no. And these are the kind of dissonance that put these men in the kind of conditions they find themselves, and occasionally they succumb to corruption. And even the salary is increased. If we do not ensure that they are giving good retirement benefits, they should equally be allowed owner-occupier houses scheme that can enable them to contribute. All these are issues we are putting in place, and we have always been on that. We want to ensure that at the end of the day, a police officer will be proud to put on a uniform and do his job without fear, and be sure that when he's retiring, he has a place for his children, he has a place for his wife, he retire into comfort. These are things that are very important. We believe that the new reforms that have been packaged by the government is going to take note of all this, a total package for a Nigerian police force. In those days, you know that the post-independent police force was a force that Nigerians used to be very proud of. As a youth in the early 60s, when you meet a Nigerian policeman on the road with good short knickers and a baton, well-knit dresses, you feel like being a police officer. We've had very brilliant young men in those days, and we always envying them, and we wanted to be like that. But you know that we lost it during the Civil War, and after that, all the military regimes that came into this country relegated the Nigerian police to the background, and no brilliant young man wanted to join the police. Their budget plummeted, their functions were usurped, and so we lost it along the line. So subsequent civilian governments have tried to rebuild the Nigerian police. The rebuilding of Nigerian police force is going to be a gradual thing, and we need to join hands together to see how we can bring about the kind of police force that we will once again be proud of. Okay, well, Mr. Brimo, in building that police force is part of the reason that we are here. And I know that there are 3 major institutions that have that responsibility. Your institution, the police force itself, and then the police trust fund. So many other issues around all of these. When we return from this break, do stay with us. Well, thanks for staying with us. Mr. Brimo, one of the major functions of the Police Service Commission, as you mentioned earlier, is to dismiss and exercise disciplinary control over persons other than the Inspector General of Police in the Nigeria Police Force. One of the core issues
responsible for the NSAS protests was the errant behavior of certain policemen in the Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Where was the Police Service Commission when people were calling for the SARS to be ended, which led to what we eventually had, and the discipline that was expected was not forthcoming?
You recall that shortly before the nationwide protests, the commission sat over several cases, disciplinary cases involving police officers. If you recall that we dismissed 9 senior police officers, reduced about 19 in rank, and over 42 others were given reprimands, other severe reprimands, and so on. So on a regular basis, the Police Service Commission has never shirked its responsibility of ensuring that any erring police officer that is documented to have erred or committed any offense that is brought to our attention, that is properly disciplined. But there be challenges over the years concerning that issue, this issue of police discipline. Now, the reporting line when crimes are committed are issues that have been of great challenge. The Commission itself has only been existing in Abuja, the federal capital. As I speak to you, the Commission does not exist in any zone in the country, neither do we have office in any state in Nigeria. And so it's been a big challenge. So the Commission has been less visible, so that when crimes are committed, Nigerians are not even aware that there is an oversight body over this police. So what they do is to write to National Human Rights Commission or write back to Nigerian police to investigate. So when you have an institution that has a regulator, but you have to make them to regulate themselves, you have to make them to judge themselves and investigate themselves, it's a very big challenge. You find that when reports come to us, before the commission will send staff from Abuja to Maiduguri, or Abuja to Sokoto, Abuja to Port Harcourt, to go and investigate a reported case of human rights abuse, it takes time. And more often, the finances are not even there. So as I speak with you, the Police Service Commission is not even having a head office. The commission is scattered in about 3 wings in the Federal Secretariat with less than 400 staff to police or to monitor over 400,000 policemen. So it's been a big challenge that we have a constitutional body as ours, but not properly positioned to discharge its duties. We've made our position known to government. The response has been positive. We've been assured our head office will be completed within the next few months. We equally appeal to the National Assembly.
It's quite
They've
interesting.
Responded positively that the budget will be looked into.
Well,
and,
Mr. Braimah, it's quite
the
ironic, really, because there's an act that establishes the commission, and I mean, those things are clearly stated there. You talked about the National Assembly. I believe that is being considered. There's a proposal for a bill, I think an amendment to the bill that establishes the Police Service Commission. But when you talk about having offices across states, don't forget there's also the complaint response unit of the Nigerian police. So people wonder, wouldn't this be a duplication? But you know what? Let me just couch this in this general question. So there's a legal tussle between the PSC and the police over recruitment of constables. And that points to a discord between the Police Service Commission and the police. So if there's a discord, how do you even work together in the first place to ensure efficiency of the police when there are issues between the Police Service Commission and the police itself?
Well, it's not a discord as such. It's a constitutional issue. The Police Act said the old Police Act gave authority to police then, with an authority from the president, to recruit. That was in the early 1904, 1905, early in those days, before the emergence of the Police Service Commission. So when the Police Service Commission was conceived, that mandate was transferred to the Commission in the 1999 Constitution, that the Police Service Commission shall be responsible for the appointment of men and officers into the Nigerian police force, which effectively removed that responsibility from the former area commanders or the IGP. But interpretational problems have always emerged. We work together, the police and the commission always work jointly during recruitment. But there have been interpretational problems that, no, it's the police that are supposed to recruit their own men, and the commission is to appoint. And then we say, you can't sit in office and ask me to appoint somebody you recruit I've not seen. It's a process. So once in a while, we find some 1 or 2 IGPs who come up, agitate, and then we have political intervention. President Obasanjo intervened in one of these torsos, and it was resolved. And we've had 4 attorney generals that tried to resolve this issue. 2 did in favor of the police, and 2 did in favor of the commission. And we believe that the only arbiter, the only person, the only group body that can interpret the Constitution is the courts. So we sought for permission to approach the court for proper interpretation of that role. If the recruitment bill is a function of the police, then we leave it. If it's a function of the commission, let the commission do it in conjunction with the police, as we've been doing. So, but that has been been the issue. We went to court. The High Court said, okay, it's the police function, and we allowed them. We went to appeal. We appealed against it. The appeal courts unanimously said no. The Constitution places recruitment.
Well, Mr. Brimo, you did. If you had allowed, you probably wouldn't have escalated it beyond that. But you know that going to court is some sort of last resort. There should have been some, deliberation saying, well, this is what the law says. You have legal departments on both sides. This is what the law says. But because of the exigencies of the security situation in the country, let's go about it this way. Because as we speak, those constables, they've still not been deployed. About 10,000 or over 9,000 of them have been trained, waiting to be deployed. And we have security challenges. So to that extent, would you say there's still no discord between the Police Service Commission and the police?
I don't want to use the word discord. You see, it's better that a problem is solved once and for all. We have not put I think the action is continuous. The actual recruitment is continuous. All we're saying, domiciliary, let us have control over recruitment. The recruitment is always done jointly. We cannot do recruitment without the police. So it's not a discord, but we are just looking for constitutional interpretation so that the issue will be laid to rest once and for all. Like I said, for over 15 years, the issue of who is to recruit has been ongoing. It has always reared its head. And if this issue is not resolved constitutionally, it will continue to plague the system. And it's a big drawback. Like you said, we are very, very worried at this time that when we need to have recruited another set, we are still dragging. It is not a good thing for this country. It's not a good bet. We believe that in a very short time, the issue will be laid to rest. We are not happy with what has happened, and we don't want this to continue. So it's a last resort for this to happen, so that finally the issue will no longer rear its head again. Once the Supreme Court makes final pronouncement, because the appeal court has made its stand known, and we agree with the judgment, the police are not satisfied. They said they will go to Supreme Court. We believe that within the next few months, the Supreme Court will make final pronouncement on this, and it will never rear its head again.
Okay, all right, Mr. Brimo. Let's
plague the system.
Yeah, let's take that further. Mr. Adekoya, he says there is no discord, but one has gotten a judgment in favor, appealed by the other, which was unsatisfied, and a discord or not? Or maybe a little tiff if it's not a discord?
Well, I think he's made his point very clear. I don't think it's a discord. It's a constitutional matter.
But the issue remains that it would seem like the police and the Police Service Commission are not particularly on the same page all of the time.
Well, if you're familiar with how we create laws in this country, and sometimes jokingly, some of the lawmakers will say that deliberately also certain clauses are inserted just for the interest and benefit of some persons. At the point where the Police Service Commission Act was created, the framers knew the provisions of the 19-whatever law that was pre-existing.
1968 Police Act.
Yeah, so it should have expressly said, this therefore annuls the powers in previous provision. Then that would have been clear. Which brings us to another issue in Nigeria. There's a Police Service Commission, there's a Police Council, there's a Minister of Police Affairs, there's a Senate Committee on Police, there's House of Reps Committee on Police, there's the IGP as an institution. Then there's the President. In fact, before you get to the president, there's the NSA. Then you have the president. We are a nation that is built and fashioned to administer. We are over-administrating. And operationally, there are challenges. I think that in this case, except where the service commissioner said they sought approval and got approval to seek proper interpretations of the courts. So they got that approval. So that's fine. I'm sure the presidency also wants finality to this issue, which is good. But operationally, we have a president CNC who sits in Aso Rock, who has a bird's eye view on all the agencies of states that has to do with security. You know, I think the clamor for sacking of the service chiefs is beginning to drop somehow. I don't know if we're still clamoring. But I was having an argument, I was saying, why do you sack a people who you have not resourced to do their job? Why is the president refusing to sack the service chiefs? It must be that the president knows something that we do not know. And perhaps he feels that it makes no sense to sack the service chiefs. Because clearly, you can only sack a man and say a man is incompetent, not capable, if you have provided him the wherewithal.
But let me give you this quote from the president's spokesperson, Garba Shehu, just right after that attack, before the president eventually put out a tweet. He said, President Buhari says the government had given all the needed support to the armed forces to take all necessary steps to protect the country's population and its territory. I'm sure
they would have put a caveat to the best of their ability. Because you cannot say, so if you say all, all is relative. All to what?
Well,
what do you measure? How do you measure
all the necessary steps to protect the country's population and its territory? That's the caveat.
Okay, so that would be very interesting. The Nigerian military doesn't have max, more than 15 helicopters. I don't know how many is operational now. I don't know how many fighter jets we have operational now. When you say all, what is all? How do you define all? Are you saying all in the store? All what we have?
All within our means.
Yes, so all within our means. So
all that is required.
No. I mean, even America that spent over $500 billion on upgrading their military has not said they have provided all.
Let's stay with the conversation on the police.
Yes.
So talking about the funding, because it would seem like, okay, maybe I should even ask you this. How significant is funding to the challenges of policing?
My dear brother, that's about 90% of the problem. But the bigger problem is not just the funding. So say we have 330,000 policemen now, as they are. We are not even using what we have correctly. When we first, it's about the innovation. When you know there's paucity of funds, once you know your set constraints and your threat environment, you have to be innovative in application of your resources. So how are the current resources being applied before we come to the issue of funding? That's why I said, what's the return on investment? In a case where you have 50% or more protecting individuals, and then you see the 2019 National Security Strategy that says that we will now focus on human security, but then 50% of the police force is protecting private interests, and you have a current population of about almost 220 million, and then you're asking for more resources. If you increase 10,000 constables, where would they go to? Let's say another 50% will follow the trajectory. Have you been to the office of the IGP? It's like a place it's almost like a political market. It's a marketplace. You see all emirs, you see obas, first-class politicians, second-class. It's people are thronging that office, seeking for what? Protection. What are they seeking protection from? From a structure which some have deliberately put under. So you are seeking, there's no amount of security that will protect you from a system which you have caused to fail.
So essentially you're saying, while funding is an issue,
absolute
issue. The
structure is defective. And let me paint a picture. If we make the politicians pay for their security, I mean, I'll be very happy when politicians begin to pay for the 20, not policemen, arm the private guard companies. They are licensed companies already. Let them carry arms. Let the senator pay for 20 private armed persons. Limit them to service pistols, at least for now, and limit their weapons classification for now. Let the VIP.
That will free up more policemen for them.
If that frees up the over 50% currently locked down, what do you think will happen?
You know,
sorry, let me just make this.
This is a trend, and I see that you make this just to point to the fact that we could do this better.
Absolutely.
But you know, I'd like you to also talk to this as we wind down on this conversation, because I mean, one major thing that the military has said is intelligence, getting information from the residents, just as we wind down. And we've talked about the police. Police is meant to be primarily responsible for security. Do you see an opportunity here for the police to maybe come in, help gather intelligence? Because it might be difficult for people to approach soldiers compared to a policeman that you see on a daily basis. Do you see an opportunity here for the police?
There's always an opportunity for the police. But operationally, do you know the work schedule of a typical police officer attached to a station? Intelligence is about information, and you must be close to the theater of interest for you to gather information. You must at least be close to the people. You have an IPO who may be handling only God knows how many cases, which is the same issues we have almost everywhere. So where is the personnel? Where, by the time they are brain fagged, they are fatigued, where do they have enough presence of mind to be able to? Because intelligence analysis takes a lot of work. You need to be able to run analysis. You need to look at data. Data is indicative. You need to look at crime stats. What is trending? What direction is it trending towards? Then you then project based on your understanding of local trends. You can then say, okay, we have seen this trend based on month-on-month analysis. There seems to be an increase in this. We assess that this and this will happen. We are getting information from here, and information is pointing towards this. Okay. Where do you see the current police station close to you? Do they have that level of sophistication to be able to comprehend what is expected? Okay. Because they are just manual. They are just being put on manual labor mode.
Okay. Well, Mr. Brimo, in 30 seconds, my colleague asked you the other time about collaboration with the police so that we do not have anything that looks or could be interpreted by people as a discord. So moving forward now, what do we need to do to ensure that we have the kind of police service that we need, especially from the angle of the Police Service Commission? In 30 seconds.
Thank you. Without the police, there is no Police Service Commission. So certainly, we are bound to work together. Our job is to enhance the police force, and we are doing exactly that. And the board that we have right now is not sleeping at all. We are not looking at the challenges. Instead, we are progressively looking at how to improve. So as I speak to you, we have before us a long list of motivational concepts. We need to do some promotion, like we finished dealt with some investigations. All for policemen that will be found to have infracted the law, you soon hear from us what measures we are going to take. The National Human Rights Commission has just submitted to us the investigation they carried out last year concerning the police, and we are going to implement it. So we're going to ensure that policemen are motivated. We're going to release a new promotion list for them, for those who have done very well within this period. We promote them, and we don't look at the challenges. Ours is to ensure that these policemen we have today are well motivated. There are quite a lot we have on our table. Yes. We can assure you that within the next few months, you will hear good news about
and
the
that's
Nigerian
the kind
police.
And it's the kind of good news we really would love to see, because every time we hear of any form of unrest, it gives every Nigerian sleepless nights. Austin Brimo, member Police Service Commission, and Onyekachi Adekoya, fellow Nigerian Institute of Industrial Security and Zonal Provost Marshal, Association of Licensed Private Security Practitioners of Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and thoughts this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Sunrise Daily returns momentarily. Stay with us.
Well, you're welcome back. The state of states is what we're considering now. It's no news that Nigeria is in a recession, and a lot of times we talk about the federal level, the Minister of Finance, the President, and all that. But the question this morning is, looking at states across the Federation, what can we do with them, in quotes, to get Nigeria out of this recession? What have we done, and what can we do better? And I mean, a particular organization that has been doing research about the state of status budget. So this morning we have joining us Seun Onigude, the Director of Budget. He joins us via Zoom. on the program. Thank you for joining us on Sunrise Daily.
It's a pleasure having you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, great to have you. Well, by saying a lot of times we pay attention to the federal government, what the government at that level is doing to get us out of recession, to ensure that our inflation drops. Yes, the CBN has, the power to make those decisions, but just how important are states in this equation?
Thank you so much. I mean, if we look at the FAC, which is the federal allocation, 48.5% passes through the state. So it's very important to look at that. Also, the value-added tax, 85%, 50% to the state, 35% to the states, to the local government. So that also passes through the state. The payee, the payroll tax also is fully collected by the state. So a lot is happening within the state. A whole lot of Nigerian states also cannot survive on their independent revenues, so internal revenues, as some call it. So they depend mostly on the federation revenues that is distributed centrally. And it's very, very important to pay attention to the state because the CBN can provide some stopgap support to the federal government. And even though there's some limitations in the CBN Act, recent occurrences have shown that the CBN has just continuously provided that support some an unlimited manner. But for the states, there is a challenge in that. They are limited in how much support they can get from the CBN. And most times, what they have gotten has been the refund for the Paris Club debt. Sometimes they've gotten refund for projects that were delivered within the state, capital projects that were developed in the state. Beyond that, there has been nothing concrete that's come from the CBN to the state. So it's very, very important that states also start thinking clearly. But one thing that it's important that we have to put down is that states need to start being production centers and not just distribution zones. I mean, it's not just about picking up FAC allocation. States have to start looking inwards about what value can they provide within the Nigerian state and what opportunities lie within their state. Because without them not improving IGR, without them not improving internal revenues and creating growth, they cannot meet the needs of their people. And the only option that they have to do is to continually raise debt, which will have serious repercussions for the state in the near term. Yeah.
But, Mr. Nibide, when you talked about states becoming production centers on their own, a number of times that has been raised. Fingers have been pointed at the Constitution as being a limiting factor to what states can do on their own. For instance, as everyone does, that there's hardly a state in Nigeria, there's hardly a region in Nigeria that cannot stand on its own economically, but they are limited by the Constitution, the executive exclusive lists and all of that. So in that regard, do you still think that it is possible for the states to produce with those limitations notwithstanding?
Yeah, there are limitations. And I think, to change the Constitution is a straightforward approach. You need the National Assembly, you need the State Houses of Assembly. So if the state governors really want the Constitution changed, if they want to remove off some clauses that limit them, they can do that. I mean, we have to stop infantilizing the Nigerian's governance system. They can do what if they feel that this is imperative for their survival or their existence. So, and one of the critical things that would limit, not even just about things that are limited by the Constitution. That's to do more about things around the port system. So even if you want to build an export market from a state, how efficient is the federal port system? Infrastructure, the road infrastructure network that would connect you to the port, or build or take goods around. Mostly those roads will be federal projects. Even if you do all the roads within your state, how do you bring it down to the mainstream? You also are going to look at even issues of funding and financing, and also even production. So,
you've spoken forgive me, you've spoken very, very interestingly about the fact that the governors can do it if they want to. The question is, do they want to? We'll try to answer that one for them when we return from this break. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. Mr. Onigbede, there are those who believe that since Nigeria is in a recession, that will be done to pull us out of recession should come more from the states than from the federal government. Now, given the report that your organization has released and the fact that a good number of states do not have the resources to even spend as is, much less spend out of recession, what are the implications?
The implications, we're going to go back to where we were in 2015, a situation where 24 out of 36 states were not able to pay salaries. And that's the implication. Right now, based on our reports, we know that 8 states are already going to have liquidity challenges if they don't either reduce their recurrent expenditure or they have to grow revenue. And it's difficult to grow revenue in the pandemic or in the current recession. Because this is the time you're supposed to provide support for business, tax reliefs for organization. This is not the time for you to unnecessarily increase the burden on people or businesses. So there is a challenge in there. And I don't think that opportunity is going to come from the states. The states don't have the power to print money. They don't have the power to summon the CBN to provide support to them. So the only opportunity they have is just to keep rationalizing the cost or keep finding a way to keep expanding revenue. There's nothing beyond that. And do much more work around efficiency. And also look towards the federal government for support. I mean, there was a $1 billion support that was given to each state, but technically that would not go far. The only way is to rethink the Nigerian system around making it more about production. States need to be production centers. Every state needs to come to the matrix. I mean, we have the National Economic Council. That meeting should be about what exactly as a state am I bringing to the table. I mean, it could be about my natural resources and positioning. So a state that produces cement can be bringing cement to the table as limestone. It could be about services. It could be I could position myself to be a business process outsourcing center. I could be position myself to be a garment export processing center. I mean, you have to sit down. And it could even be exotic foods. I mean, Kenya has a $1 billion flower market, and we can grow these exotic fruits and flowers in Plateau State. So it's not impossible. It just takes some form of dedication and purpose and incentivizing that process. And that's my whole point, that every time the CBN tries to bail out states to pay salaries, I think it's not solving the problem. CBN should bail out states to be productive centers. The states that have ideas and agenda around how they want to be productive engines or how they want to really solve critical issues for the country. Those are the people that the CBN should back. Not every time we're having fiscal crisis, then it's about CBN supporting states in one way or the other. And I think that is the existential question for Nigeria. Because when we talk about Nigeria, we're looking at the summation of 36 states at the end of it. The federal government can have some oversight of some certain roles in the economy. But if we don't have states that are solid and strong, I mean, we can't move forward. I mean, an average state in Nigeria, I mean, almost 18 out of 36 states in Nigeria have IGR less than 36 billion naira. I mean, what exactly are you going to do with 2 billion?
To those details, Mr. Onigwide, but there is something. Yeah, just a moment. We'll come to those details. I know Kade is inching to go on that one, but you know, there is something that you mentioned about the 8 states that are, you know, worst hit with the financial distress, and we know. Economically, everyone talks about the fact that it's the micro, small, and medium enterprises that literally champion, fund the economy of any environment or any state or any nation at that. Given the challenges that those states have, and the fact that the micro, small, and medium enterprises ought to have a major stake in the scheme of things, where does that leave the SMEs in those states in particular, and perhaps across board?
I mean, you've had a great question, and to be honest, maybe apart from Lagos State, because he has the financial capacity to do so, and the federal government, I've not seen a state rolling out robust support from the SMEs within the states. And if we're going to accelerate jobs effectively, if we're going to be able to provide real support to the economy, that's a space that we have to look much more in. And I think more of what the states needs to come across along with is with the federal government. The federal government has a payroll protection scheme. I think the state needs to tap into that. Like I said, apart from Lagos State that has the financial capacity, most states in Nigeria are incapacitated. A lot of states that could have done better are the South states because they have the 13% derivation. But in a very strange form, they run one of the highest overhead costs within the country, and don't even at budget, we are really always shocked at the size of the overhead cost of states like Bayelsa, Delta, Akwa Ibom State. I mean, those are real challenges on the corner. So in a way, the state government needs to sit down with the federal government. I mean, this is the wholesome economy. What are you going to do to support it? And because the conversation on productivity or making state production center is not a short term, it's not a sprint, it's not a short-term conversation. It requires dedication, it requires tenacity, and it requires multiple election cycles or focused leadership. So that exactly will not happen suddenly. But right now, to protect SMEs is to protect their payroll, to protect SMEs is to ensure that they get tax reliefs, and which is part of what is in the current Finance Act of the Federal, or Finance Bill of the Federal Government. I think states need to also be able to sensitize SMEs to take advantage of such schemes. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that quite a number of states can't afford, they can't afford their recurrent expenditure. And based on the analysis you've done, in fact, you've done projections for 2020, I believe. But the question now is, this did not happen on the states, right? This is not something they were born with. This is a process that led to where we are right now. So what's responsible for that in the first place, really? Because we're looking at the years ahead. So it's important to learn from maybe the mistakes or the inactions of the past. So how did the states get into this in the first place?
You have to divide it into separate parts because a lot of states got into, some had legacy issues. It's still like Oyo with other legacy issues because, being the capital of the Western region, carry their own backlog of huge personnel cost and also size of its population. So, and has not been able to grow its revenue. So, for example, you have Ogun State has IGR of 75 to 78 billion naira annually. Oyo State has an IGR of around 30 billion naira. So the gap just keeps being there. Compared to Lagos State with an IGR of close to 300 up to close to 400 billion naira. So you have a state like Oyo, you have to be able to define that legacy issues and not being able to grow revenue significantly over the years. You have a state like Osun that it was about poor fiscal management. Debt was borrowed beyond the limit or the capacity of the state. So the risk analysis for that state was not good enough. You might think $100 oil was going to be forever, but people who are proper risk analysts will tell you that this is a commodity that is driven around different cycles. So you have to make adjustments for those risks. And there are some states that the reason why they are in this crisis is just because of overhead costs beyond normal, beyond reasonable levels. In our own analysis, you should not run overhead more than 15 to 20% of your total recurrent expenditure. And when you start running overheads beyond that, then you start getting things around Bauchi start struggling. You start finding states like around Kogi also start struggling because he has legacy issues around personnel costs that were not paid, and the new governor is still trying. I don't want to call him a new governor, but Governor Yabil is still trying to clear that out, and it looks like it's a hole that doesn't get closed. So, what I advise states much more is this: be much more, and this is not the time because when the economy is boom, when maybe oil prices are high and the fact receipts are great, those are the times that you can really, really implement hard reforms and be able to rationalize your personnel or to be able to make them much more efficient. But at this point, it will not be the best time to say, okay, let some workers go. And that's number one. Number two is also have to be gross efficient on your overhead costs. Number three, you also have to be very, very much more aggressive on revenue collections. And it's a simple conversation. People talk about Lagos State has great IGR. But Lagos State has great IGR because it has the largest cluster of formal organizations in the country. It's easy to collect taxes if you have formal organizations in the state. If you have too many informal organizations, or they are not formalizing, or the process of formalization is challenging, then definitely there will be a problem you even be able to take taxes. And the question has to be simple. The state has to find a way to attract formal businesses, organizations to its own spaces. And that's the way it makes it easy for you to take taxes. It will shock you that if you look at the World Bank doing business report, more than 30 states in Nigeria perform worse than the sub-Saharan African average when it comes to ease of doing business. So that means our states are not even doing well at all. So those are the conversations that states have to even sit down and ask. How do we make the process of doing business in our states much more better? How do we become a magnet for talent, technology talent, service delivery talent, those who are even trying to even do export market talent? How do we become a talent for? How do we attract investment? A whole lot of investment to this country in the last 5 to 6 years have oscillated between Lagos, Ogun, and Kaduna State. How do other states also think about what exactly are these states doing right that we can build upon and also be able to attract investment? So, and if you can see, those states are also have shown incredible increase in their in internally generated revenue, and that exactly is the story that states have to sit down and ask themselves. Because if we wait to say there's a problem at the federal level or there are binding issues in the constitution, that's why we can't move forward, then we take it out. Then we have a conversation to remove them. The incentives that states have to have the incentive to grow. If the only incentive is to share allocation at every month or every quarter, then there is not going to be progress.
Yeah.
That process has to be reformed. Yeah.
So clearly, ease of doing business is not a constitutional thing because we have states that are doing well there. So other states don't have to wait for constitution review to, make doing business easier in their states. Before we move on, really, I'd like to take you up on something you mentioned, saying that, a state's overhead should not be more than 50% of the revenue. That sounds like, if states will want to adhere strictly to that, that will mean cutting their personnel base. That will mean retrenching, pretty much. Isn't that it?
Overheads. I'm not trying to explain personnel. Your cost of running government. You have to buy plane tickets. You have to pay for water bills. You have to find a way to aggregate those expenses and make sure that you are grossly efficient around it. Your administrative expenses. Governor Peter Obi is the one that animates this conversation effectively. Around, a state governor flying to Abuja with retinue of aides. Dinners and morning, afternoon, night in government offices. You need to understand that this is a pandemic, and so if there's any time for brutal efficiency, it is this time, because every kobo, every naira that can be saved to provide succor for the people needs to be. And that exactly is the narrative that most states have to be. This is not the time to carry on that this was what it was. This is time to really strain the size of government, strain the expense of government, strain the cost of government, and be able to put much more support to your small businesses and people that actually need them. So, that is the problem. The budget for, even in capital projects, there's so many opacity around capital projects. There were states that ran more capital project on government reform. What exactly is government reform when you spend 20 billion on government reform? And your health budget in the state is less than 5 billion. If you read the state of state, we made a copious examples of states that continuously do that, where capital expenditure lack proper classification. Or maybe even the secretary to the state government spends more money on capital expenditure than the health or the education infrastructure of the country, of the state. Those are the questions that the state government needs to look inward and ask. Do we exist in government for ourselves, or are we really working for the people? Until those questions are asked, we will keep asking, why is this primary health care center bad? Why are children sitting on the floor in the school system? Those are the questions that we should ask. Public resources should be dedicated to the public good, and not just for the benefit of those who serve in public offices.
Issues around the health and education, which is the focus of that your report. But there was something you mentioned about the ease of doing business, and it got me interested, because I remember there was a Presidential Enabling Business Environment Committee set up, headed by the President, PEBEC, and that committee was tasked with the responsibility of facilitating ease of doing business. And they had two specific examples. It was Lagos and Kaduna, and perhaps that explains, why Nigeria seemed to jump a little bit in those two states, for a while. But then when you look at other states, one would have expected that those examples of Lagos and Kaduna would have been replicated in other states, such that the ease of doing business would have made it so much better and more productive for the states. Now, when we talk about ease of doing business, what are the specific challenges that, in your opinion, the SMEs and maybe the private sector face that's not allowing the economy of each of these states to grow as they should?
I mean, when we talk about ease of doing business, we are basically coming down to the efficiency of government bureaucracy. I mean, it's as simple as that. And if we stay on the index, and the index is great, I mean, doing business index is great because, but the threshold is low. I mean, you have been, the World Bank only rates Nigeria. I mean, when you look at the state of Lagos and Kano states, I mean, it doesn't, the ease of doing business ranking for Nigeria doesn't concern the other states. I mean, there's another report that looks at the ranking for states. I mean, and that's a separate report. And if you look at that report, I mean, we still checked recently, Nigeria still lags behind significant. I mean, Nigerian states lag behind significant. And what are we talking about here? Registration of a property, transfer of property, registration of business, being able to get government permits, being able to pay government levies. How do you make all that process efficient? How do you make sure that it's enabled by technology? How does the bureaucracy that manage that process be able to respond to queries or able to respond to even when their systems break down? Those are the questions that we call ease of doing business. And states have to put enough dedication to that, because I'm bringing an investor into a country or into a state. I need to be able to provide, to ease the process into it for the person. Payment of taxes. How do you pay taxes? How easy it is for people to be able to log on platforms or systems and pay taxes, and how are they audited so that the whole process is efficient? And those are the low-hanging fruits that a state can make a decision to say, on this index of the World Bank, or on this coefficient that the World Bank actually measures, I'm going to take 10, 20 steps forward. I mean, those are the kind of conversations that we should have as a country. But it's so unfortunate that we don't have those conversations. We don't even look at those coefficients to say, someone is trying to check across countries in Africa and is asking myself, where does Nigeria stand on ease of doing, and which state is being more proactive? And you can't even find Nigerian states doing well about that. And I think these are the questions that the National Economic Council should answer. I mean, how does every state go back and ensure that on the ease of doing business ranking or the coefficients, they are doing far better than it is? Because that's even the first litmus test for you to attract investment in your state.
These things go straight to the heart of the poverty index and the unemployment index as well. So how do we find our way out of these?
I mean, see, we look at Nigeria and we have to understand that there's no exceptionality about our story. Everybody in Nigeria, either poverty or unemployment, either Vietnam, India, China, even Britain. I mean, I had incredible levels of poverty or unemployment at the time, but everybody sits down and analyzes where exactly is my competitive advantage. We have a great story now going around import substitution, but it's great to talk about import substitution. But import substitution is not going to solve our problem. It's not going to lift us out of the poverty or unemployment crisis. We have to plug our economy to the global economy. It's as simple as ABC. It's not going to be sudden. It's not going to be immediate, but it has to be the target. Because for someone that cuts flour in Kenya, that makes dresses in Vietnam, either for Gap or either for all these international brands, it's an opportunity for a job. And that's exactly where our problem lies. We sit down today and dollar is $500 on the streets, it's $480, it's going AY. Why? Because the underlying commodity that drives our foreign exchange is subject to price variation. So currency variation in Nigeria is not the same situation in a non-oil economy like Kenya. I mean, I visited Kenya somewhere in 2010 or 2012. The shillings, Kenya shillings was exchanging for 90 shillings, to $1. It's 110 shillings right now. I mean, that's over almost 10 to 80 years. I mean, compare that to Nigeria when it was around 150, 160 there. Now we're talking about 480. And these questions that we need to delink our FX earning from oil. And the only way we're going to do that is to be able to pay attention to exports, and that's discipline. And because exports require discipline, because you are competing on a global scale, we have not come across like we want to imbibe that discipline to do the work. Until we are ready to do the work, where the person in Plateau is exporting flowers, and he can get the flowers in the cold storage down to the port in Lagos or anywhere in Onitsha, he can get it out to Europe. When someone else in Oyo is exporting food for the diaspora market, when someone else in Taraba is exporting tea and coffee, those are the reasons when we know that Nigeria is ready to be a country that wants to change its story. But this whole idea of we need to eat what we preserve, we need to, manage what we need. I mean, it's just us, enduring poverty. It's not going to take us anywhere. And those are the questions where policymakers need to sit down. What is your pathway to export? We need a port system that is quality. We need a financial market that is more sophisticated. We need infrastructure that can take the goods there. We need power. So those are the kind of questions that come on the table, and we see that we need a roadmap, we need a structure. But constantly trying to conserve dollars and trying to manage the imports, I mean, it's just not making sense. South Africa's import is almost $83 billion. Nigeria's import is around $50 billion. So it's not even like our imports are that great. So why are we always shouting, oh, we are importing too much? We are not importing too much for the size of our economy or the size of population we have. We're just not exporting enough. The same way we're not making enough revenue. And those are the questions that we should come on the table, and the discipline that comes across with it, and the long-term thinking that we can use to deliver all of that. And it's always painful because I believe that policymakers should be able to sit down and ask ourselves, why does every time oil prices are sinking low, our currency is losing value? And anybody who's going to invest in your country will think about macroeconomic stability. All the work Obasanjo did in 4 years for the second time of his reign around macroeconomic stability, banks being more stronger, the currency being more stable, was just because you have to be in that space to be able to attract investment. But when we have as a country where the state policy now looks like we have to manage what we have and we have to just keep running around within the same circle, we are not going to go far in any way that way. That is not the way economies go. China did all of that. Taiwan did all of that. Japan did all of that. For growth to geometrically happen, you have to look outward, and it requires a whole lot of this.
Now, moving forward, I mean, there are projections that Nigeria will get out of this recession early next year. In fact, some are saying in record time compared to what we had in the previous recession that Nigeria got into. So, I mean, looking at the trends, are you seeing Nigeria getting out of this recession figure-wise and reality-wise? Because for some people, Nigeria never came out of that previous recession. So, first, do you see Nigeria coming out of that recession in what some people have called record time?
Okay, I mean, that's an incredible question. But we have to first disaggregate the GDP of Nigeria to really understand when we get out of recession. Because even being able to, we had a 3% dip, and the saving grace we have are two sectors, telecoms and banking. I mean, take out those two sectors, we'll be at maybe -10. There's a critical sector that we don't look at. That's the trade sector. For almost 7 quarters, the trade sector had been in negative territory. I mean, and that's the sector of what you call the yalojas, the yalajes. That's the sector of where those who are exporting. That's the sector of those who are doing the retail and the wholesale trade. I mean, that's the sector that when people say the money is not circulating in the economy, that is exactly the sector you look specifically at. So when we say we can get out of recession in China, we can even get out of recession before. If you get a good bump in telecom sector and maybe the financial sector, maybe agricultural does maybe above 2%, yes, you can get out of recession. Mathematically, that looks good. But in reality-wise, you also are going to look at that sector. Is your insurance sector out of recession? No. Is your trade sector out of recession? No. I mean, is your agricultural sector growing at even 3%? No. I mean, so, and agriculture sector is like 25% of your GDP. We're also going to look at the GDP composition on the other side, which is when you look at consumption investment. I mean, how much investment is coming into your country? How much consumption is happening within the economy? And how much net exports are you having? So by the time you look at all of that, you might marginally cross the Rubicon because somehow two sectors are taking you off, or maybe oil gets a bump and you climb out of that. But you will look at the economy as a whole, like in the spaces where it touches more people, you're going to ask yourself, are those sectors growing as they should grow? I mean, that's why when we look at those GDP numbers, we need to be able to disaggregate them and look clearly and much more intentionally, about which sectors are actually growing and which ones are not growing before we just take the headline and say, oh yeah, we're out of recession. And for us to do those things is to be intentional about how we invest in those sectors. There's a huge conversation on agriculture. Yeah.
Well, I wanted you to say something about agriculture, but more from the security angle. A number of people are unable to go to the markets. A number of people are unable to go to their farms. For road infrastructure, taking the market from the farm settlements to the towns is an issue. Even to go farm, do the farming itself, is the issue of security. How significant, from where you sit, are those challenges in the whole scheme of things?
It's happening already. I mean, it's happening already. Food prices are off the roof. I mean, food inflation is continuously rising, and you have food. I mean, it's not like there's no production. I mean, there's some level. There's production. Production has dipped, but you can't even get the food out of the production centers, and that is really a real big problem. And that's why when people talk about security as a fundamental frame, for an economy that would grow, it's not like a joke, or it's not a trite statement. It's an important fact. So the federal government has to find a way, to guarantee the security. I mean, we are hearing funny stories around farmers paying taxes, paying levies to be able to harvest their crops and things like that. Those are not things that will engender agricultural growth. There also has to be conversation also around the kind of agriculture we do. Because the kind of agriculture we do is not going to take people out of poverty. The MBS report, the poverty report, showed that households that either had the head of the household had limited education or was involved in agriculture were the poorest households. I mean, those were where the MBS figures showed. I mean, and it's something that there has to be conversation around the scale of agriculture that we are doing. Because there's always this push about go back to agriculture, go back to agriculture. The kind of agriculture of this age does not require a multitude of people. It requires science, it requires technology, and it requires quality seedlings.
That's actually a great place to anchor. So, I mean, we can hold on to that if we're going to move forward. But I know we can go on with this conversation, especially with you, the Director of Budget, Seun Onigbede. I would like to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the state of states in Nigeria.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that's a good place to begin the day and take on the issues, whatever the issues are that you can take on.
So you should get your tractor and stuff.
And, the agricultural value chain is a humongous one. You only need to choose your pick. So food for thought there. That's been Sunrise Daily today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a safe day. I'm Ayo Makide.
And I'm Kayode Hikiolu. Thank you for joining us.